Hi, VC, it's Aaron with Almer. Today I'm entering a contest for JT's Record Room, and JT is such a cool guy. I really love his channel, and I love his taste in music, and he shows a lot of killer records. He lives down in Nevada, really close to me actually, and yeah, I just really love your channel, JT. And this is a push to get him to 400 subs, which he's in the almost a mid 300 range, so that's really cool. You definitely should be at 400 or higher because you've got a great channel. So I'm supposed to show 5 records and then 3 movies. I kind of did this a little differently, but I kind of stuck pretty close to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show 6 of my all-time favorites, and I'm showing them for a reason. So in my life, I have had 6 bands that have been my favorite band at one point in my life, and I will show the album. Well, I'll get to that. So first off, I'm going to start off with the Beatles, because when I was about three and a half years old, my parents used to play records, and I became, I got into music from hearing this record, the Abbey Road. Hearing that when I was so young is what boosted my musical, appreciation. I really got into music after I started hearing this being played around my house, and I became obsessed with music. And it's because of this record specifically, and the song Octopus's Garden. When I was that young, it was the one I couldn't wait for it to come on. And they were my first favorite band, and they were my favorite band for years until about my early to mid-teens. And then I started getting into other music. I mean, I liked them. I liked the Beach Boys. There was a few others I liked back then. But the Beatles are what started my musical journey, and especially this record here. So that's one of my all-time favorite records still. So then I got into my early teens, around 13, 14 years old, and I discovered this group, and they became my favorite band for a little while. And in my teenage years, that was the biggest amount of changes I had. The Beatles were my favorite band from the time I was about 3 till about 13, and then there was about 3 or 4 bands that kept switching the next few years, and then about for the last 20 years I've had the same favorite, 15 years maybe. So my next is Greg Kihn Band, and I discovered the Greg Kihn Band, and I liked him. He was a little different. He had popular songs, but he was just different. And I liked, it was kind of a power pop that had a kind of a hard edge to him at times. And this album here, by the time this album came out, he was my favorite musician. I mean, my favorite group was the Greg Kihn Band for about a year, 2 years maybe. I don't even know if it was that long. But I still love the Greg Kihn Band, and this one has the song Jeopardy, of course. It's a great album. Every song's good, but I like all his albums. He has a bunch of, like a dozen really good albums. And so Greg Kihn took over for a bit. And then I'd always been into this other band, and Eliminator came out. It was ZZ Top. And then by the time this album came out, Afterburner, they became my favorite band. Even though this isn't my favorite album of them, it's a really good one. I like this one a lot. But I was into Eliminator, this, and then I'd gotten into their earlier stuff through the Best of ZZ Top, and I had a cassette which had Tres Hombres on one side and Fandango on the other. And I played that so much. And they became my favorite band for a while after the Greg Kihn Band. And then, so after ZZ Top, and this album's really good. I love Afterburner. So after ZZ Top, I started getting into some heavier stuff. And about 80, I don't know what year it was, but the album Peace Sells But Who's Buying came out, and that introduced me to a whole nother side of music, the really heavy thrash music. And Megadeth became my favorite band. And by the time this album came out, they were my favorite band. So this was released, all these albums were the first albums released as my favorite band, as this group being my favorite band. So Megadeth, and this is a great underrated album. So Far So Good So What. It's got In My Darkest Hour on it, Hook and Mouth, Liar, Set the World Afire. Just an amazing record. And by the time this came out, I was totally obsessed with Megadeth, and I loved them, and they were my favorite band for a few years. So then after that, I'd always loved Kiss. And then by the time this album came out, Kiss became my favorite band, and it's just because they had such a huge body of work. It's like all their stuff from the 70s, all their 80s. I love their 80s work. And they kind of overtook Megadeth just because they had so much material. And so Kiss became my favorite band, and this Hot in the Shade record, me and my friends, when this came out, we had it on cassette, and we would just drive around and listen to it over and over and just jam out to it. And I love this record. I think it's a great one. It's one of my favorites from that era, actually. I really love this record. You know, King of Hearts is a great song. The Gene Simmons songs on here are really cool. You know, Love's a Slap in the Face, you know, Betrayed. I love all this stuff. Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell, and it's just a great record. Boomerang. I like every song on this. One of my favorites, actually. So then Kiss is my favorite band for years, and I thought there's no way any band will ever be my favorite band after Kiss. But my friend introduced me to Clutch, who you see behind me, and I started listening to them, and I was like, oh wow, I love this. And the more I heard them, the more albums I heard of them, they kind of overtook Kiss, and that's still like my two favorite bands is Clutch and Kiss. So by the time this album here came out, Blast Tyrant from Clutch, I was totally hooked, and they were my favorite. They had overtaken Kiss, but just barely, as my favorite band. And this album here is just so amazing, starting with Mercury. It's got The Mob Goes Wild, Cypress Grove, The Regulator, Army of Bono, Worm Drink. I mean, just Spleen Merchant, Subtle Hustle. Every song is amazing on this record. And it's just, they're just a different level of music to me. They're just so unique. It's just the uniqueness, and they have a huge body of work as well. If they didn't, then it'd still be Kiss. But Clutch has, you know, 15 albums or so, and this just hooked me. And you know, Pure Rock Fury is probably my favorite album by Clutch, and Blast Tyrant, and Elephant Rider, you know, those three. But just, I love them all. So that's my 6 records instead of 5 that mean a lot to me, that I've loved forever. And next up I'm going to do movies, but I'm just going to show records of the movies and by different directors. And this director is, I want to get it right, I know him, but Irvin Kershner. And everyone can probably guess what I'm going to show just from that name. This is Empire Strikes Back. I was you know, I grew up I was 7 years old when the first Star Wars movie came out, 10 years old when this came out, and I really love this one, and I love the soundtrack. And it had such a dark tone to this movie that he added when he directed this one. George Lucas was great on the first one, but he just added a darker tone to Star Wars on this, and it's never been matched, really. Just the darkness, and this is my favorite Star Wars movie, along with the first one. You know, both of them pretty close, but it's just, I love this movie, and the soundtrack is amazing. It's all just orchestral. I mean, all these I have aren't soundtracks of songs, they're scores. So actually, if it's a really good movie and a really good score, I like that. So next up, and this has George Lucas involved as well, but this is Steven Spielberg as the director, and it's Raiders of the Lost Ark, another one of my favorite movies of all time. And it still is kind of weird to me when it says Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, because I grew up with it like this. And this is a pretty good soundtrack too. I mean, the music's pretty good, the orchestration. But I think this is the best thing Steven Spielberg ever did. And George Lucas was involved, of course. And I love this movie. Of course, most people do. And next up, I'm going to go with Stanley Kubrick. And this is my favorite movie he did. And this soundtrack is the complete original score of The Clockwork Orange. And I love A Clockwork Orange, great movie, especially when I was in my late teens. I really me and my friends watched it a lot, and I love this movie. The score is really good, it's good stuff, you know, it's Clockwork Orange. So there we go, I got my Stanley Kubrick there. And all right, everyone, just get JT up to 400. I mean, you should be 500,000. Great channel, great guy. And just love your videos, JT, and you're a really cool guy, and I will see you later. Goodbye, everyone.